Good afternoon. The good news is they invited me back and even bumped me up from the Alka-Seltzer session at the beginning of day 2. Bad news is, as you've doubtless just enjoyed a plethora of patisserie delights courtesy of the students from Manchester College, I fear we have about 8.5 minutes until your sugar rush peaks, leaving you in a pre-lunch slump. So let's crack on. You can read the official blurb on Julie Fawcett, CEO of Qbic Hotels, in the programme. But here are some lesser-known facts. She studied economics at Cardiff, followed by an MBA. She's a qualified sailing instructor and race skipper, which is always handy when on a recent sailing weekend for team building purposes, which representatives from the Qbic investment team were in attendance, a member of her team went overboard. She created, operated, and subsequently sold a successful sportswear e-commerce business way before Betty even started getting sweaty. She spent 4 years at Bridges Fund Management as entrepreneur in residence. Possibly the most ridiculous job title ever. Those are her words, not mine. And she's chair of the Board of Trustees for the South Downs National Park Trust. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Julie Fawcett. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
We'll start off with a really easy one.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself a visionary hotelier?
No. Is that going to make this awkward?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Look, I think when you sort of think about a visionary hotelier, you typically think about kind of some of the rock gods of hotels, and they're typically sort of middle-aged men in fancy threads, and they've kind of really delivered something kind of major, and it's a sort of historical look back on their life, and that's definitely not me. But in my job as a leader of a nascent hotel business, it is, of course, beholden on us to have a view about what the future is going to look like. We're here to build something for the future. And in fact, because we own all parts of the value chain, the brand, the operating model, and the real estate, there's an agility and a responsibility that goes with that in terms of being able to take that vision and turn it into something. Hotelling is a long-term game, we know that. So do I consider myself as some kind of rock star that's kind of got all the answers in a crystal ball? The answer is absolutely no. I think the job, this job, and actually the job of leader of any business, is to curate all the opinions of stakeholders and the things and bring it all together. You're the conductor of the orchestra. So in that sense, deliver a visionary, it's the day job.
Great stuff. Can we talk a little bit about Qbic, specifically the fabric of the Kyuubi room and also the sort of the social ethos that goes behind the business? And we've got a short video which might help put the Kyuubi room into context, please.
Please do enjoy the music.
The captions at the end of that perhaps answer my next question, but I'll let you do it in your own words. What is the Qbic? Why do you use it? Why is it different?
So the Qbic was born actually in the teeth of the last recession, and it was it's fairly obviously a modular build. To give it its kind of strapline, we're able to turn a white box with a series of connections coming out of the floor into a hotel room in about 3 hours. So it's our version of modular design. It was born on the teeth of the last recession when it was quite clear that certain types of real estate were going to need to be adapted and reused. And what the Qbic does is it allows that to happen in a more cost-effective and quicker way. But what it also does is it allows the room to continue to evolve and innovate and change over time, because every single piece can be swapped out and changed.
Thank you. The social ethos behind the organisation, though, that's where I'm really interested in. Where does that come from? Does that come from you? Does that come from the ownership structure? Is that from the people within it, or is it a combination? Why is it important to you? Where does it come from?
So we are the first hotel that was ever registered as a B Corp. B Corp's actually an American innovation that's coming over here, which means that you enshrine into your articles and in your structure certain CSR objectives. It's embedded root and branch into who we are and what we are. It came about from the original seed investment for the Qbic project, which was by Bridges Fund Management about 4 or 5 years ago now. And they are an impact investor. And what it means is that we have a clear relationship that's riven into the culture of the business between how we take care of our staff, how we take care of all of our stakeholders, our staff, our supply chain, the community, but most obviously and probably most dominantly is our sustainability ethos.
Why is that important? You could operate without that, not necessarily as successfully, but you could operate in exactly the same way without it. Why is it important?
Yeah, we could. I think I think it's not just important. I think it's actually going to be a hygiene factor for the next generation of consumers. I mean, we've only got to look at the climate change report in the news a couple of days ago to see how profound this issue's becoming. Just to set this into context, in the next 10 years, even if you don't care about climate change, in the next 10 years, resource scarcity is going to put a massive imperative on all of us. We all see it in our P&Ls, which is the rising costs of energy. That is only going to get worse. In the next 10 years, the whole world is going to have a billion more people on the planet. We are going to need about 50% more energy. We're going to need about 40% more food and water. And that will all come home to roost on us and hoteliers in terms of our P&L lines. So even if you don't care about your social corporate responsibility for reasons of economy, you really do need to start to care. And I think also it is going to be absolutely critical to providing a solution that's relevant to the next generation of consumers. So you add those two things together, it's a no-brainer.
So you are seeing a direct positive impact on the bottom line as a result of sustainability efforts?
I mean, look, it's always hard to kind of triage that out in terms of consumer response. In terms of sustainability efforts, yes, we emit 67% less carbon emissions than the next nearest hotel. And that comes home to roost in terms of how big our bills are. So that's straightforward.
I'm interested in, so there's a twofold effect in terms of the effect on bottom line, but also what's driving consumers. How do you know, how do you know what consumers want? How do you know specifically that that's what it is that they're after?
Yes, that old question. So I think consumers respond to what you give them. So they respond in all sorts of formats, most notably reviews, and we're absolutely awash in data in a way that we never have been before. You know, if you're not looking at it, that's just silly, you know. So there is plenty of ways to understand that. Then you've kind of got the sort of, you know, you've got the brand agency concept guys who are kind of envisioning the future for you with their crystal balls, and I struggle with some of that because they typically take some kind of archetypal customer that's sort of fallen out of Instagram with their perfect bloody life. And that becomes your whole consumer. You know,
Which you build your entire strategy around.
Build your whole strategy. And actually people are much richer and more diverse than that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's nothing like some good old-fashioned talking to people to really understand the richness and diversity of what people actually do want.
And you have them in your hotel.
Right there. That's
there.
a beautiful thing. You can talk to them.
They must not leave until you have spoken to them.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So sort of a natural progression, I guess, is looking at the future of the industry, the future of community. We've talked a little bit about the B Corp. The community, I guess, the traditional pillars of the community, so the bank manager, the local doctor, don't really exist anymore. Is as a place for a hotel to become a pillar, or something within the community that people can be drawn to, utilise?
So there's 2 points there. One is sort of change, and one is whether the community response is the right one. Let's start with the community thing. Can we become the village hall? And I don't think that that's like the day job for a hotel. I think there's plenty of other institutions out there that are capable of doing it. I do think, however, that it's absolutely beholden on us to be neighbourly, to be good neighbours, to be much more integrated. We are employers, we're resource users, we impact that kind of terrain absolutely completely. Making sure, and that's actually just, one of the earlier sessions I was saying, are you bringing back, is it all about innovation, or is it just bringing back old ideas? Well, that's pretty much how we used to do it, right? So there's some good things in doing that. We should be more integrated. And that's about how you source things. It's about how you have relationships with community organisations. It doesn't need to be complicated. But I don't think it is some sort of massive step forward into becoming kind of the pillar of the local community.
Do you think so when we met at because we've had a little bit of rehearsal, we had a little chat. We met at the Qbic, and the foyer area, the ground floor, the eating space there was co-working groups in there were people in there for meetings. It was much more than just a restaurant or a bar. Is that something that you've strived to achieve, or is that sort of happened organically?
Well, we're all building these communal spaces now, and of course it does encourage that kind of activity. We do, again, as part of our CSR activities, offer free meeting space to community groups. We have a charity that lives in the hotel. So we do kind of generate that kind of thing. But I think what's interesting, though, is the point about change. Mm-hmm. And the point and change is the rate of change is greater than it's ever been, and it will continue to accelerate. So what that means for us the challenge for us as hotels is that we take a couple of £1 million, multiples of millions of pounds, and we build about 60 to 100,000 square foot of reinforced concrete and divide it up into boxes. And then we are suddenly faced with the fact that the thing that we built for has already changed 3 years later. How do we attack that challenge? I think, and so part of that has been to redesign our spaces, but who knows what those spaces are going to need to be in a few years' time. I think the big challenge for us in the hotel industry now is how we respond to that. And I think actually that's really what's driven the Qbic imperative. It's less about being able to build kind of quickly and cheaply. It is more about the ability to keep changing, keep it simple, keep it replaceable, keep it updatable. Because I think that's probably going to be our biggest challenge. And the modularity of it,
is what helps that.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about technology? So change technology, pretty hand-in-hand conversations. There's been an enormous amount of discussion at the conference about technology, about utilising technology in the hotel space. What do you see it as an enabler? Do you see it as something that is it a positive? Is it a negative? Is there too much data to sort of process? How do you utilise technology within your hotel?
So I think there are some really profound, for want of a better word, mega trends. Technology is one of them. Demographic changes are another one. Environmental changes are another one. Population increases. And I think that that technology is an absolute. It's just not going to go away. It's only going to get more and more. And we have to learn to harness it and use it to our benefit. I think where we go wrong, and it's been talked about often enough, is we try and sort of hardwareify it and we kind of make a facility for it. I think where the value add for hoteliers in technology is to use it to take away all the rubbish tasks. And we've talked about that for a long time, and we're actually still nowhere close. There's still absolutely tons of stuff that we do by clicking on a computer screen that could be automated. There's a long, long way to travel.
Why do you think that's not happening?
I guess it's just about the scale of investment,
right.
And also a lot of the systems are very enshrined and embedded. Resistance to change, we've got to require change. But it's clear to see that we could do a lot more. And what that does is it frees us up to do good old-fashioned hotelling. Be nice to people,
Talking
turns out.
to people.
Yeah, talking to people, yeah.
I want to briefly talk about brands. It's a funny one. Qbic is a brand, right? You see it as a brand. What does a brand mean to you?
Ooh. I didn't know you were going to ask it like that.
That's left
I
field.
haven't prepped the answer. Look, I think brands are a promise.
Yeah.
Right? They're just a promise to a consumer that you're going to do something in a certain way. That's it at the end of the day. Brands in the hotel industry, I think, have become a proxy for any other way of understanding things. And that's because the star system is so rubbish. I mean, 1 and 2, who are they? 3 is purple or blue. 4 is, I don't know, it's the sort of detached mock Tudor in whatever, it's the aspirational class, and then you've got 5 is relatively clear. And because it's such a murky world, there's no other way of understanding what you're going to get as an experience without a brand on top of it. So I think they really do have value. I think what bemuses everybody is the what that word?
Peripheral?
Proliferation.
Oh, I didn't even know what you were going to say.
You see?
Putting words in your mouth.
Anyway.
Sorry.
Where were we? Proliferation of brands.
Right, got it, yeah.
And I think that has to happen because things are changing.
Yeah.
And, you've got to retire some old ones at the same time. So these new brands are bringing are the heavy club of forcing change through. So I think they have a value. I think they're important. I think they help people understand what they're going to get. I think we could do a lot more just in terms of standardising some of the other ways that you rate a hotel.
Got it.
That's my view.
Thank you. And you didn't even know I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
When we had our chat, and as everyone will have studiously read in the programme, you are an economics student and graduate. And you're now in hotels, and actually described the hospitality industry when we met as a happy, warm place. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Why is it a happy, warm place?
Well, it kind of is, isn't it? We're sort of present at everyone's, we're present at people's weddings, we're present at kind of holidays, we're present at, celebrations, the kind of, and of the industries that I've been involved in, the hospitality industry is innately hospitable. People are warm and friendly, and it's a nice place to work. It's just that straightforward. It's no more than that.
No more
and we should be less sort of self-effacing about, there's a lot of sort of beating ourselves with twigs in the hotels. We don't change quick enough and this and that. And, it's a great industry. It's a really great industry to be in. And it's a fantastic time to be in it. All of the mega kind of trends around increase in travel, democratization of travel, it makes it an absolutely fantastic time to be a hotelier and to be growing a business in this industry.
Let's talk a little bit about women in hospitality.
Yes.
So I think you're probably, sadly, the exception rather than the norm when it comes to leader, CEO, managing director level within a hotel. Why? What do we need to do to change it?
So before deciding what we need to do to change it, I think we have to understand why we need to change. There was a study done in 91 countries of several thousand listed businesses. It was enormously comprehensive, and it related profitability to female participation in leadership. And lo, it is true.
Shocker.
Yeah, we're better at it, turns out.
Breaking news.
So that's the end. No,
fake news.
so I think, and on even on a micro scale in developing countries, where there were land schemes, the land they gave to women was more productive than the land they gave to men. And women are there is no question that the way that we lead, the way that we manage, the way that we behave in teams is different. We're more collaborative. And both of those things need to work. That very sort of decisive, normal formation of leadership that you kind of get with the typical hierarchical structure has a value. Sometimes you need a decisive way forward, but actually it's also more prone to mistakes. The collaborative solution, the ask the audience solution, helps ameliorate some of those problems. So you need both in an organisation. So I think the first thing about women in leadership, and particularly in our industry where we are going to struggle, certainly in this country, with gaining good resources, is we have to think differently about it. We have to understand leadership differently. We have to understand mentoring women differently. We have to bring we have to bring up the next generation of leaders, and we have to make a decision to do it. That's the first thing. And it's actually pulled on us as women as well. It's not just, everybody needs to do it. Madeleine Albright famously said, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And I kind of think that's true. You know, we've got to make it happen.
You mentioned mentoring. Do you think that that's one of the sort of key to successes?
I think it's part of it,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think women and girls are pretty much bred to stand back, be less about putting themselves forward. Their overconfidence isn't rewarded in the same way as it is when we raise men. And it's not any individual's problem, it's a societal thing. If we want to change that, if we want female leadership, we are going to have to put in a different type of growth structure through a business. It won't be about decisive hierarchical leadership and growth. It will be about mentoring and bringing forward those people with talent. And there is a lot of latent talent there to be brought forward.
I don't know if you might have just answered one of my last questions, and then we'll have a look and see if there's any on the app. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
So I thought about this one,
Well
and my
done.
first answer was mini kettles, but
Yes.
then I thought that wouldn't.
Maybe you could have two.
Not
You
a
could have
thing.
like a macro one and a micro
So my
one.
micro is mini kettles.
Okay, done.
And the sachet thing, that
Yes.
whole
Or the
arrangement.
coffee pods. Like just
All of it bad.
Done. They're in
So
room
that's
101.
micro. Yeah,
Done.
done. The big thing is that I would change the way that we train and understand and value frontline. So we train people to be very segmented. Your rooms, your F&B, your this, your that, whatever. Blah. And then when they're really good at it, we reward them by giving them a laptop and taking them away from the front line. I mean,
Bonkers.
talk me through the logic of that. So that's the first problem. But also this really sort of weird kind of like value structure between, I'm rooms, I'm F&B. I mean, just serve the customer. Just serve the customer. And be really proud of it. And we should pay people to be really good at that and not pay them to just stand behind a laptop. I mean, honestly, the ultimate success for some of the people is to stand behind a laptop.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
you've made it. Here's your laptop.
Woo! Here's a mini kettle
Yeah.
on the side.
And some coffee pods.
Yeah, it's USB, it's great.
Are there any questions on the... No. Any questions from the floor? We can have microphones, we can run around. No? Okay. Crumbs.
That was
I
the
don't
dan-
know what
was
that
the-
means.
That was the dance section.
Is there anything else that you want to contribute? Is there anything that we haven't kind of covered that you sort of want to tell the world? Because this is your opportunity. No
See,
pressure.
we didn't practice that either. If I'd known that, I'd have had some spare stuff.
We've talked about women in hospitality. We've talked about technology. We've talked about valuing frontline. What about guests? What about you? How you're going to?
Shall I tell you
Reach
about
out.
how we're going to grow the business?
Why don't you?
Shall I?
How are you going to grow the business?
Yeah, so it's a thing. So Qbic was a really good idea, right? And it was sitting around as a really good idea for a long time. We got invested in early doors by an impact investor, and we were able to put together kind of the concept vehicle. But actually, the real challenge in taking a good idea, the real challenge is to take the good idea and turn it into something that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it took several years for us to secure investment. We were bought by Cerberus a year and a half ago now, and with the objective to scale the business with 20 sites over the next 5 years. Yeah, right. So that's good. Yeah, that's going well. With the freehold acquisition and across Europe. And of course the challenges of that are the same that everybody in this room is facing, which is that we are competing for the same assets everybody else is facing. And we're also, I think, in the teeth of a problem which I suspect will creep onto the agenda more and more at these kind of events over the next few years, which is the real and genuine issue of how cities are handling growth. And we've seen it in the response to over-tourism in places like Barcelona. We're seeing it in Madrid. We're seeing it in Amsterdam. I think we'll probably see it in Edinburgh shortly. And I think that one of the biggest challenges is not only going to be about how we service the customer in those environments, how we provide the actual real estate, but is actually the response of the residents in those cities. I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest challenges that the industry faces as it starts to grow.
Which takes us nicely back to the neighbourhood, to the community, to
Absolutely
hotels
right.
as well.
Yeah.
Done.
Boom.
And we are out of time.
Oh,
So you
hooray.
may not, rock god perhaps not, but visionary hotelier, I think we can call you that. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank me. Please join me in thanking Julie.